Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Fusion21 webinar. It's great to have so many of you with us this morning. For those that don't remember, I'm sure a number of you have been on the these webinars before. We had a sort of little break over the summer period. My name's Andrew Gray. I'm the member relationships manager at Fusion21, and it's my pleasure this morning to act as host for this webinar and to introduce our speakers to you. And we're really delighted in terms of this, of putting together sort of a series of webinars around sort of health and safety issues and so on, and delighted to be working alongside one of our key partners, the Bell Group. Just in case any of you haven't been on one of these webinars before, there are a number of options. Obviously, you can minimize the control panel on your right-hand side by clicking the orange arrow. That will ensure that you see most of the presentations. If you're having any difficulty with the audio, you can adjust the settings. Though again, based on our past experience, sometimes just switching off and switching back on again can actually resolve the questions. And then finally, and definitely most importantly, we do want these sessions to be as interactive as possible. But as you know, you, the audience, are on mute and will remain so for the duration. But please do use the question box to put your questions forward. And again, we will have time at the end this morning to go through those questions with the panel. So, without further ado, as I said, I'm delighted to introduce you to today's panel. So we've got John Jones, who's the Operations Director at the Bell Group. Good morning, John. We then have Clive Johnson from the NoFalls Foundation. Again, morning, Clive. And then Richard Wilks, who's head of Health, Safety and Sustainability Director at the Bell Group. So that's enough of my introductions. I'm now going to hand over to Richard, who's just going to go through this morning's presentation and then introduce the other speakers. So over to you, Richard.
Andrew, thank you for that. And yeah, welcome and hello, everybody. Today is a great opportunity to talk about a simplistic innovation that Bell Group are very pleased about. And we're also really happy to be partnered up with Clive Johnson and the NoFalls Foundation. But obviously, the size of group that Bell are, falls from ladders, potential falls from ladders is a concern. It's a concern for us all. Now, I'm going to hand over to Clive Johnson now, who's a trustee with the NoFalls Foundation. And so, Clive, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, everybody. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to join this webinar to talk about a topic which has been close to my heart for many, many years. And if you could just click to the next slide, please, Andrew, the first slide I've got there, which I've not got too many to talk through this morning, but Richard said right at the start, these are hard-hitting numbers, and whether you know it or not, but there's more than 10 million people at work as part of their everyday jobs, and as the slide says, every day 99 of them fall, and yes, 99 of them, they're sort of every day, and it's really quite alarming. And ultimately, what we get from that is, as records tell us, there's 35 fatalities a year, and more than half of them are with construction workers, and that's what we know about. So there's obviously a lot more falls out there that's not recorded and that we don't know about. So what I want to try and get across today with you is about the struggle I think industry's had for many years in trying to get their heads around how to work at height safely and without risk to health. And we've got regulations, but regulations don't seem to be working. We've had the working at height regs since 2005, but we're still having all these falls, which is really quite alarming. So, and I think it's something Richard might pick up on a bit later, but for me, the way to get people to work safely at height is getting people with the right attitudes and having the right relationship to their personal safety and their health. And so I'm going to pick up on a little story on that, which may sort of help you understand that. So back in 1997, Clive was the sort of in-house health and safety guy on a massive refurbishment project at Waterloo Station in London. Now, on that project, back in them days, the safety was pretty good, and the project manager on the site had got a real angle on providing the right equipment for the guys to work. He was really quite proactive going back all those years. And we were leading up to Christmas, and we were all going home for Christmas, and I sort of jumped on my train in Waterloo, headed back up to Doncaster, and Dave got on the train and he were heading up to Newcastle. Anyway, and between the Christmas and the New Year, I got a call from the construction director of the company that were carrying out the works at the station. And he said, "Oh, have you heard about Dave?" I said, "Oh no, what's happened to him?" He said, "Oh, when he got home, he got into the house and his wife said, 'Look, I need you to do a favour before the kids come home from school. Go up into the loft and get me the Christmas tree out.' 'No problem, love,' he said. So he pops upstairs into the back bedroom, pulls a chair out from the back bedroom and puts it on the landing. Stands on the chair, stands on the top of the back of the chair, pushes the loft hatch up and gets in. Fantastic. Gets in the loft, passes the Christmas tree out to his good lady. She then puts it in the back bedroom. As he's coming out of the loft, he puts his foot on the back of the chair. It wobbles. Next thing we know, Dave's at the bottom of the staircase. Okay. Now, as a result of that fall, Dave is now, and he still is, in a wheelchair. So what I'm trying to say here is that Dave's relationship at work was really positive because he put the right equipment, but because he was doing working activity at home, he never thought it would happen to him. So I'm still in contact with Dave now. Now, unfortunately, this accident happened at home. He then, because it didn't happen at work, there was no claim for compensation or anything like that. He lived in a lovely big house. He now lives in a bungalow. He couldn't afford to send his kids to university because the fall was at home. So Dave's whole life changed because of that one particular working at height incident. Now, the second reason I'm going to tell you that is because that's how Clive used to get into the loft. So I was thinking, well, hang on, if I'm away and my wife says, "Tom, you've seen your dad go up in the loft, go and get me that, whatever it is, out of the loft and bring me it down." Now, I couldn't have lived with myself if that would have happened. The following day, I was straight down to Wilks or B&Q and I got myself a loft ladder. Now, that incident back in 1997, albeit I was a health and safety practitioner, changed my whole relationship to safety and health because of that incident. And the key bit around working at height is having that right attitude and relationship to safety, because the throw of the dice has a massive part to play in terms of how you're injured. There's every chance he could have fallen, got up and walked away. But this particular day, he was so unlucky that that didn't happen. So whenever I deliver working at height training, the big part I try to get across is them changing their relationship to working at height, because of, you never know how you're going to fall, how you're going to get injured. It's just a luck of the draw, unfortunately. But we roll this dice on a day-to-day basis and think we're going to be okay. So all I say to people is think what if and not if only. It's having that sort of mindset about that. So that's a little story which changed my whole perception and relationship to safety. So if you just kind of move on, please, Andrew, to the next slide. So, as I've tried to say earlier, falls from height are even more tragic because most of them can be avoidable, and working at height should not be a dangerous activity if it's planned properly. And what you're going to experience today and see is what the Bell Group have developed to help people work at height in a safer and healthier way. So falls can be prevented without a doubt, and this is through proper training. The working at height regulation is quite clear. You must have proper training for working at height, and that includes a whole host of things. It's not just about ladder training, because I only work on a ladder. Working at height training would include a whole host of different holistic height activities, so you have a full understanding of the implications of working at height. All working at height should be properly planned and thought about. The quality and selection of equipment is absolutely key, because it's unfortunately, if something goes wrong, you've got to demonstrate why you chose that piece of equipment. And I think the last point I've made here is having a strong safety culture. And that goes back to the point I made earlier about my own little story. But the safety culture, and that stems from the top of your businesses. It's getting that culture to come down, but it also can come up. So something else which also qualifies me to talk about this in the sort of passion that I do is that I am a sort of expert witness. I only do expert witness stuff for work at night. So everything that I've been talking about and what I'll share with you later on is about what I've learned from people who've got it wrong when they've had to go to court. So there's nothing wrong with using a ladder, but what we're saying is show the thought process of why you get to use a ladder, and then that puts you in a pretty good place then to defend anything that's going on. So, you know, training is key, selection of equipment is key, but the biggest part of that is your relationship to that working night activity. And yes, you might have been doing it for many, many years. And yes, you might have been lucky for many, many years. All I ask you to do is think about what could you lose if you get it wrong when you're working at height. And then you might have a different approach to your working at height activities and the way you do. And now that's whether at work or whether it's at home. Okay. So if there's one takeaway from me today from this little slide is that if you haven't got a loft ladder, pop down and get one. Anyway, on that note, Richard, I would like to hand to Andrew.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that. Straight on to you, John.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And again, thanks for everybody attending today. For those of you who know me, I'm sure there's a few that do know me on the call, on the webinar today, but those who don't, I started my career as a painter and decorator. I worked on the tools for best part of 15 years, something like that, and then moved into management and progressed in my career up to sort of the director level. What I want to pick up today is about the planning, that ladders can be safe, they are a viable option. So Andrew, do you want to click on to the next slide, please? So yes, planning the work. Again, I've worked at height pretty much most of my career, and if I've not actually been physically doing, I've been planning to do the work. I've been creating Oscars, completing risk assessments, cost, method statements, everything like that that goes with the planning of working at height. Next slide, Andrew, please. The textbook's answer, it doesn't exist in all the competencies. I've been working with Richard Wilks now for many years, even prior before he joined us as the director within the business. And he's quite right, he says health and safety, it doesn't really exist. People exist, the risks exist, and it's all good and bad management. Every time we've looked into an instance, every time we've looked into an occasion where something has gone wrong, it generally does fall down to bad management. We want to keep our people safe, so we plan and manage the work, selecting the most appropriate work at height solution. I mean, anybody who tells you that there's only one way to do anything safely, they don't know what they're talking about, and that's fundamentally the truth. Next slide, please, Andrew. So we move on to the selection. CDM plans are developed, so we encourage our surveyors to input to the solution when they're actually pricing the works, and then they pass that on to the contract manager. The contract manager then goes to site to ensure that that is the right piece of equipment that we've said for doing the job. Ladders are not the default solution, but if they're used safely, they're a valuable and essential work at height solution, and the solution can be simple. Next slide, please, Andrew. So this is a acronym that I pinched off Clive only a couple of days ago, believe it or not, but it's true. Talking about people must have the right skills, they must have the knowledge, attitude, training, and experience. Picking up on the attitude, one of the questions that Clive actually asked myself only a couple of days ago, John, if you were using a ladder at home, what would you do? I said, honestly, Clive, I would use the Bell ladder safety system. I've got it at home. I remember putting up the Christmas lights on the gutters this time last year, ready for Christmas. I put the slip mat out. I put the outriggers out on the ladder. I got up there, did the job safe, put it away, without even thinking about, using a different solution. So it is about attitude. It's about having, that is your go-to. If you are going to use a ladder, this is the system that you know will make sure we do it in the safest manner. Next slide, please. Yeah, so about, you know, we use every work at height solutions, as do everybody that's in our industry. You know, the solution is available and allow the trained workers to think and plan work, picking up the information from initial work surveys, discussing on-site situations as part of their daily briefings. This is effectively the dynamic risk assessment. If ladders are not suitable, they're not used. At Bell, we train and empower workers to stop and think. Any competent manager knows that in construction, it changes. Every day changes, and that's what causes the problems. It could be weather, it could be an obstacle, it could be development, and then it's up to us with the expertise then to not just rely on the paperwork, but actually choose the right solution and adapting how we perform that work at height on that day. And if it changes, you know, we need to make sure that the daily briefing, that the operatives, the clients, everybody knows why it's changed, and to ensure we do it safely. Next slide, please. So we regularly use step ladders, we use hop-ups, mutes, tube scaffolding ladders, poles, towers, scaffolding systems, and all other solutions that can add to the options. We know that one size doesn't fit all, and all our operatives, all our managers, surveyors are all educated in that, you know, that these solutions are out there for accessing all the work situations that we do daily as a business. Next slide, please. So, planning the work. Let's listen to HSE, as Clive rightly said, there are standards that we need to adhere to. Ladders and step ladders are not banned under health and safety law. That's a fact. We do get some, you know, clients who, not clients, but certainly some people who we thought who say no, they're banned. Well, they're not. They're not banned. The fact is that a sensible practical option for low risk operation tasks. If a ladder can be erected with a space available and there's no external factors that can, and this could be a low risk work and low duration of work on the ladders, most tasks are carried out just for a few minutes. And if they're not, you know, if the likes of our operatives are up there, going to paint a Georgian window, it's going to take 20 minutes. Well, we would use an alternative system to access that, such as tower scaffolding. We assess every situation and the duration of time on that ladder to carry out the task. But the key message for me is ladders are not banned from HSE. Next slide, please. Sorry, just listen. Yeah, so competency. Who can use a ladder? To use a ladder, you need to be competent. You need to have the instructions and understand how to use the equipment. You need to have the appropriate training, as I picked up before. And you're being trained, and you should work under the supervision of somebody who can perform the task competently. Now, training can often take place on the job. What we've established is, you know, we take a toolbox talk training, on-site starters. We come to the business, have on-site training, classroom environments to work. You know, we do carry out on-site practical training for all of our operatives, and that includes even apprentices. We're passionate about recruiting apprentices within the business, and we've committed to 100 apprentices for the next 5 years. The only way we can get apprentices site ready is by teaching them how to work very safely. So the earlier we can get into that, the better it is for them, the better it is for us, and the better it is for the industry. So we're passionate about us to make sure that all our operatives and apprentices are site ready, and they can work from ladders and other access equipment safely. Next slide, please. Yes, so we want to improve, we want to innovate at Bell. Over 7 years, we've improved the safety of all our workers to use ladders. Our accident records speak for themselves. Richard showed me the accident record today, and they're absolutely phenomenal. We just don't touch wood, we don't have accidents on ladders. 7 years ago, as an industry market leader, we took the initiative to using anti-slip devices as mandatory for our ladder systems. Now, that is an industry standard. That's us using that. If anybody uses a ladder, step ladder, that they have to use an anti-slip device. Something bought within the business, and it's been in practice now for at least 5 years in the business. So I can quite confidently tell you, whenever I go to a site or anybody goes to a site, all our operators are using anti-slip devices with all of the ladders and access equipment. Next slide, please. Above all, we want to be safe. The Bell, we like to support the NoFalls Foundation with Clive. We're very lucky to have Clive here today and talk about the foundation's work. And you know, as a business, we're really proud that Clive's taken the time to come and speak to us and to you guys today, to share his knowledge. And also, you know, it's lovely to hear that they're supporting us in our systems, because we know we're doing the right thing as a business. I think this next slide. Yep, and I think that's back over to you, Clive.
Excellent.
Thank you for that, John. Thank you very much indeed. And right, I've had a brief introduction there from John about the NoFalls Charter, and I've been very privileged and proud to be part of the trustees within the NoFalls Charter, which is a relatively new sort of foundation, really, which has only probably been going just over a year, but it's full of like-minded people, like some of them you're listening to today, to stop these falls from height, which most of them can be avoided. So I'm not going to go into all the detail around what the charter is about, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what it is, what our intentions are, and probably how you could get involved going forward. And so if you can just go on to the next slide, please, Andrew. So the work in terms of what we're doing at the NoFalls Charter is about raising awareness of life-changing consequences and fatalities following falls from height. And that's across all sectors. It isn't just construction, because many of you are probably aware that agriculture sort of contribute a lot, unfortunately, to the falls from height issues. So this is a sort of foundation which is covering all sort of business activities really around falls from height. And ultimately, we want to prevent falls from height wherever we can. Ultimately, we want to be able to provide research for all different sectors so they can dip in and out to find out what they can do to avert and avoid and mitigate falls from height. But ultimately, we're there to support every industry sector around working height activities. A bit like a phone a friend, really. And there's always somebody at the end of the phone with some type of expertise, whether it's from the National Farmers Union, whether it's from construction, whether it's from IPAF, whether it's from PASMA. There's an industry sector leader there to support anybody that becomes a supporter of the NoFalls Foundation. So it's got a lot to offer to industry in the hope that we can reduce these falls and raise people's awareness around working at height, really. So if you go on to the next one, please, Andrew. So just to focus your minds a little bit around sort of financial costs, and these are quite hard hitting, and we've been using similar numbers like this when we're trying to address the health agenda as well by identifying costs. Now, just annual cost for falls from height is over £500 million. And when you look at the three bubbles below you, that's a massive impact on the NHS. So just think, if we can get it right at work, we're going to be less of a burden for sure on the NHS and the A&E department. We all go away and we talk about our bank holiday weekends and the like, and we go off to Brighton, Blackpool or Bridlington, wherever you want to go. But the busiest place on a bank holiday Monday is not generally NHS. It's not generally these holiday places, it's NHS. Because people have been carrying out work activities over the weekend because of all these adverts we've had from our sort of retailers and saying, well, you can use this piece of equipment, you can use this drill to do your DIY on a weekend. So hence why there's a massive input of people A&E on a Mondays, bank holiday Mondays. So this is again just food for thought. And if we can do our bit within industry, we can be less of a burden on NHS. And then God forbid somebody does have a life-changing incident. Again, there's the benefits to go out to, and it's a loss of taxes as well. But ultimately, putting money to one side, yes, it has its part to play in all this, but we've only got one life and we've got to look after it. You know, we've got to look after the people we employ, the people that we work with, to make sure that they go home safely every day and without risk to their health. Because the most important thing in all our lives generally is our families. But when we come to work, sometimes we put that to one side because we've got to get a job done. So my request is you think about those sort of things when you are working, because you've got to get home that night. So currently we're drafting our NoFalls charter, but before it's issued and people sign up to it, we're engaging with industry stakeholders so they can put their 2 pence in. So when we do launch the charter, we can honestly and openly say that we've consulted industry before the charter goes out there. So a standardized action plan for businesses who can commit to striving for zero falls from height. So Richard and John spoke earlier on about being a supporter of this, and this is what you'll be signing up to, you know, in terms of how you carry out your working height activities. And it's all about bringing together good height safety practices, and it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's sharing what good practice is, and bearing in mind what you're going to be sharing today, this is something we could share right across the industry sectors, whether it's in construction or even agriculture, as I said earlier. And it's about teasing the charter into your working at height policies and the like. So I say we're trying to standardize what we're doing around working at height and falls from height. So a lot of work to be done as yet, but we've got the right group. We've got Build UK involved, the Farmers Union involved. We've got all the right people there to finally overview the charter, so we can then get it out there for you guys to sort of review and hopefully become a supporter of the charter and reduce our falls from height within all our sectors. So if you could flick it on. So we're calling on UK business to stand up and make a tangible commitment to achieving zero falls from height if we can, and that's across the whole of the site and throughout all our supply chains. But we can't do this alone. We've got to do it together, collectively, and hopefully one day everyone who works at height will sort of work at height safely and carry on with their sort of general sort of occupations around working at height, and you know, keep our industry thriving and innovating in terms of how we work at height. So it's nothing too challenging, or it's not a major commitment to this, but it's something to make the boards think about as to why a company should sign up to the charter. And by signing up to the charter, you're putting your head above the parapet by saying, look, this is important to us. The way we work at height is important to us. But more importantly, the people that we employ are the most important people that we have. They're your biggest asset, and we want them to come back every day. And by having the right sort of work equipment, they'll realise that they're working for a good company that cares about it. And hopefully you're going to get that, what's coming across from Richard and John today about what Bell does and how that supports its workers. And so I commend them for that, and the fact that they're changing the way that they do stuff. So our aims: zero falls from height. It starts with the construction sector, but as I said earlier, we were expanding to all other sectors, because construction, yes, they may be the biggest contributors, but as I say, agriculture, and particularly with other activities coming out now with these sort of wind turbines and a whole host of different working at height activities, we've got to broaden our sort of church really to accommodate everybody. But we'll send you the link after this call if anybody wants some more information about the NoFalls Foundation. I'd welcome that you look at it, review it, and I'm sure you, not only from a business perspective, but you'll see that it's morally probably the right thing to do as well. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to take some questions at the end, but if you want more information, I can sort of pass that on later. Back to you, Richard, I think. You're on mute, I think, Richard.
My mute button wouldn't work there. I pressed it about 10 times. Yeah, Clive, thank you very much for that. And both presentations, John and yourself, very informative. Andrew, do you want us to keep going, or do you want to skip back and go through the Bell introduction video? Is that possible?
We're still working on the technical details, so if you keep going,
keep talking.
Richard, then
not a problem.
Fine.
I'll keep talking. Yeah, just on a pick up on a few of the points. John talked very clearly about planning and selection, and that one size didn't fit all. And Clive mentioned attitude as well as John. And I think what's really important from a health and safety perspective, we are an industry that has peddled paperwork for far too many years. I don't believe, actually, as an industry, we've realised that health and safety professionals need to actually redefine themselves. And I see myself more as a people risk manager. I'm a construction engineer, building engineer by profession. And I moved into health and safety 30 years ago because people were getting injured. I was 19 and a site engineer in a project when somebody fell and got killed. And, you know, similar experiences that John's had and Clive's had. And although it's not about telling desperately sad stories, people did fall a lot 30 years ago. They fall less now, but as Clive's mentioned, there's still a huge problem, and we only know about the ones that didn't actually bounce. The ones that get injured, we recorded. Now, I can't show you the video of the Bell Group where we are just showing you the size of Bell. We operate from over 30 regional offices, and we regularly have over 1,000 people on a day working at height. Now, I did a calculation a few days ago, and if half of our workforce in a week spend 4 days working, and we know this from looking at our bonus data from wages, that in actual fact, last year, conservatively, we had 50 million seconds worth of ladder work. So ladder work from the Bell Group is a big issue. And picking up on some of the points that the HSE make on one of John's slides, is we talk about short duration, but in actual fact, it takes a second to get it wrong. And I often see people talk about short duration almost as though the fact that you're doing something very dangerously for a couple of seconds makes it okay. That's wrong. What we at Bell Group are wanting to promote, and I know Clive would firmly agree with this, is we want people to work safely every second, no chance, and to be absolutely realistic with the communication and the selection. Now, attitude is so important. We introduced several years ago a concept of our daily briefings, and it literally is a conversation. It's the thing that checks dynamically all the risk protocols. So we take the information from the surveyors and the contract managers. We look at all our health and safety processes, culmination in the CDM plan and the risk assessments and method statements. But then we stop. And what we've done is, when we introduced the daily briefings, our accident rate across the board, not just work at height, changed by a factor of about 400%. And what we found is that an over-reliance on paperwork in itself is dangerous, and that empowering our workers to actually say, hang on, and I'll give you two examples. We know now that at certain times, the use of ladders on paper would have seemed the right thing to do, and 90% of a project could be, but because of other external factors, I think John mentioned this, the question would be then, hang on a second, do we really want to be painting around that portico or that gable? And the answer would be no. So we empower them to stop and have a rethink. But on the flip side as well, we've got a lot of evidence now that when we've actually even hired in a mute to actually address a certain work at height situation, and it again seems the right thing to do, and is, but not on this particular morning when it's blowing a hoolie. And then what we would do is people would have a question and say, hang on, it really is whipping up the wind. It wasn't forecast by the BBC. Should we be in that basket today? And the answer is no. And I think this kind of empowerment of the workforce, for me, is the solution beyond the paperwork. And it's the thing that I am passionate about, because the behavioural change and getting people to believe in people and believe in their their own attitude beyond the paperwork is really the key to it. Now, the slide I've got in front of me, John had mentioned certain innovations we'd had with ladders over several years, which is absolutely true. I'm really proud of the fact that the board of directors at Bell issued across the whole 1,500 workforce anti-slip devices, which is beyond the legal standard. And we spoke to HSE about this because we didn't want anybody to get hurt falling from ladders. And I can say that last year in Bell Group, there were 50 million seconds worth of ladder. Nobody fell from a ladder in Bell Group last year. Now, I would like to think that other companies can say that, but we can prove that data. They're absolute facts, and facts that, you know, John and I and the rest of the directors and all the managers and workers at Bell are proud of, and we want to keep that up. We were facing a situation in 2018 that the European legislators brought out a new standard for BSE N131, which we absolutely welcome. But it gave us an opportunity. Then instead of just implementing a new standard, we went back to the drawing board and said, right, okay, how can we innovate? How can we use this but make things better? Next slide, please, Andrew. Now, in the actual video, hopefully, when we get it working, I do talk about the European standards, but essentially, what actually changed is there was a maximum, each ladder had to be able to take 150 kilograms. It also now, ladders for the professional standard were tested more rigorously from a durability point of view, because obviously, very different from a domestic ladder used, you know, every couple of months, say even to get into the loft. Ladders used 5 to 6 hours a day. They need to be durable. And also as well, what the European standard adopted by the UK decreed was that ladders should be wider to create this stability. Next slide, please, Andrew. Next slide, Andrew. Andrew, can you hear me there? Next slide. We're having a few little technical issues here today. Sorry, that's jumped a few slides actually, Andrew. Yes, that's the one. And if you look at the pictures to the left-hand side, I've just given you a few examples of the certain reactions to the European legislation. And what had occurred to us at Bell, the first solution would be to adopt these ladders and throw away our Bell standard, which was to use an anti-slip device. To be honest, that wasn't good enough, because we got various branches to trial ladders and to literally play about with them to find out what is the best way of not falling from a ladder. Now, whilst we support the concept of a wider base, the actual contact with the surface was much less than our anti-slip devices, and we didn't want to go backwards. In actual fact, these bases would provide the lateral stability and also some more stability from slips, yes, of old ladders, but in actual fact, we felt as though we were improving on one thing, but then going backwards. And if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, the ladders that had splayed legs would be too big for the market-leading anti-slip device, the M-Matrix, that we had adopted. So we had a problem. So we started thinking then of how we can actually keep our innovations, but then fundamentally make things safer. The next slide, please, Andrew. I'm also pleased as well that a number of years after the anti-slip device, we realised that it wasn't just the base of a ladder that needed to be supported, that the top did. Now, it will show it in more detail in the video, but we actually installed and retrofitted on all the hundreds of ladders that we own collapsible wheels. And what happens is the wheels actually, they're not totally collapsed, but they create a flat surface to whether it is brick or timber cladding, or in this instance some box profile vertical cladding, and And in tests, we found that in actual fact, they create so much more of a grip to the surface. And as you'll see in the video under the tests. Andrew, on to the next slide.
What I'm going to do now is move on to. Sorry, Richard. Is there anything in terms of that you want to add?
Yeah, what I can say, I mean, obviously these things happen, don't they? When you watch the link, and I would urge you to watch it, what we've actually done is we wanted to demonstrate just how safe a ladder can be without other complicated additions, drilling holes into buildings, compromising the weathering, reliance on pull tests that may or may not actually take place. And we actually, in the video, we showed it to a number of senior people in the field of health and safety, and especially some senior HC officers privately, who obviously can't give an opinion that you can air. There was a certain a few jovial comments about the tests themselves, because what in actual fact we do is we demonstrate just how safe a ladder can be, and we involve kicking the base of the ladder and then somebody trying to displace somebody from the ladder, pulling it from a rope, and there were real life tests. I would believe quite confidently that if the bell ladder system is used the way you see it on this video, you would not fall from the ladder unless there was some other circumstance, that something struck you, or there was some medical condition that then resulted in you falling from the ladder. Now, Andrew, I do actually have some stills of it, you know, in some kind of like background files, but I think the true essence of it, you have to actually see the video. So yeah, very unfortunate, yeah. But I think once you get it, everybody, I think you'd enjoy watching it. It's the kit is available, and we can signpost you to our ladder suppliers where people can buy this kit. It's something that we're quite passionate about at Bell, and we want to share it. We see, as John's mentioned, I'm myself the same. When I work from a ladder now, I've realised that collapsible wheels are just so brilliant at stabilising the top. The base, we use an M-Matrix Pro Plus, but we also have reconfigured some fold-out stabilising legs, so we actually can adjust them to cope with sloping ground or indeed uneven ground, and the video shows that just how safe it actually is. John,
just in terms of that, Richard, we've had a question which is around: do you find the 3-point of contact requirement working from ladder the difficult factor?
No, I think it's very interesting actually. Three points of contact is often misunderstood. 3 points of contact literally means that. It doesn't mean that somebody's got both feet and both hands on a ladder all the time. And I think to actually get reassurance there, we need to look back at the HSE document that John tabled, which actually talks about carrying things up a ladder. Now, you can't carry something up a ladder if you're holding the ladder with both hands. Now, what I would urge anybody, definitely in the health and safety world, who talks about 3 points of contact, is to actually, on a practical perspective, understand it. Now, 3 points of contact actually involves all your body parts. And if you actually watch in slow motion somebody using a ladder, when they go up the ladder, when they actually are tending to use something and they take a hand off, they naturally lean into the ladder. And I often would refer to people who get too high up ladders and they lose the stability, they lose the ladder. But in actual fact, when I've discussed this with experts like John, who has been working on a ladder, you know, earning his living since he was 16, and myself as well, worked on a ladder when I was on the tools before my university years, is your legs, you would lean into that ladder, even your stomach area would be in the ladder. You wouldn't hang off a ladder. Ladders, there's a skill, not just the paperwork training, there's a skill to using a ladder. And it was very interesting when I first joined Bell and I talked to the founder, George Bell, who made a very interesting point. He said, I can see whether I want somebody to use a ladder before they even actually put it up. I can tell if somebody's competent just by the way they pick it up. And that was quite an interesting concept, because, you know, years ago when George set up Bell, he wanted people who were competent tradesmen. And for him, that was a test to see that they knew how to safely address a ladder and pick it up. So yeah, three points of contact isn't something that that worries me. And this test has been about stabilizing the ladder. So I think the conversation about are ladders a safe and acceptable work platform? Well, of course they are. That's why they're acceptable in the law, and that's why the HSE have been very clear that they are a valuable piece of work equipment. But they have to be selected properly. The people have got to be trained to use it. They've got to be experienced. The kit has got to be suitable for that work, and they shouldn't be the default. So when I think of the hundreds of thousands of pounds we spend every year on mobile elevating work platforms, tube scaffold and tower scaffolds, pop-ups, you name it. But in actual fact, every single one of those is limited in itself. And sometimes you can't get in with a mobile elevating platform. And the solution actually is just working from a ladder. And as John's mentioned, when people talk about working at ladders for half an hour, well, they ought to go on site and actually watch our painters paint, because they're seldom up a ladder for more than 3 minutes. They literally run out of fascias or windowsills to actually paint, and they wouldn't earn any bonus. If it was a Georgian window, it would be unthinkable for us to actually work from a ladder. Our conversation would actually just ignore ladders completely, and we would be thinking of a proper platform. And then the question would be, okay, can we access tube and clip? Maybe so, maybe not. Are there any manual handling issues? Maybe so, maybe not. And then before you know it, we might be using a boom or some kind of elevated platform. So again, as John said, one size really doesn't fit all. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
That's fine. I just want to address an issue to you, Clive, which is around training. And again, we've had a question about, you know, how do we ensure people have the right working from height training. So I know that's a key part of what you're trying to do. So what would be your advice around training?
Well, for everybody listening today, my advice would be that if you're going on a working at height training course, just please make sure that it's aligned with British Standard 8454. And if you do that, that's going to give you and your business some real confidence that not only that the instructor is a competent person to deliver working at height training from his experience and the like, but it means they have to meet a certain criteria in terms of your takeaways from that training. And it won't be just about ladder training, it won't be just about this. It's a general holistic awareness working at height course, which gives you a real flavour for fragile surfaces, overhead cables, your health. I know Richard picked up on health earlier, and that's an important factor. You know, you can't just put a person to work at height who's physically fit as well. You've got to make sure he's healthy to work at height. So there's lots of ingredients within the 8454 which a training provider should reassure the company and the attendees that at the end of that training course they're going away with the right knowledge. So but yeah, 8454 key.
And John, from a sort of Bell perspective, what is the sort of training packages that you put in place for your teams?
I mean, we have obviously qualifications for most of the work at height, as use, you know, the licenses, things like that. But the ladder training specifically comes by on-site experience and on-site use, and the expertise and the experts that give the training are the guys that use the ladders every day. Per se, you know, you don't have to have a qualification in using a ladder safely. It's more about your experience, and those are the guys who mentor and they train certainly the new employees, and they train and mentor the apprentices. Then we have certain logbooks that the guys have to complete to say that they've had these levels of different training to work safely. But more importantly, it's about being competent. You know, these guys who we are taking on and employing, you know, we train them from all aspects. We have IASCO training for pretty much everything they do every day in the business, but specifically for ladder training, it's done in-house and it's done by the experts in the business, you know.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm conscious of time. We're rapidly approaching 12 o'clock, so I'm going to finish with a sort of general. I'll go around the panel and start with you, Richard. So I suppose there's sort of two questions. One is, how can we minimize working from height incidents, and what is the one thing that you think that our audience can take away from today in terms of, again, minimizing the risk?
I think work at height holistically, the main problem is when people try and run construction projects weeks before and from the paperwork, from the drawing board. It doesn't matter whether it's ladders, moops, scaffold or tower scaffold. When people decide how people are going to work at height as a default, that is dangerous. And I think surveying work properly, there might be a small element, for example, a housing project, and the majority of it could be done from step ladders, hop-ups, ladders, and podiums, but then there might be a certain element that we need actually a moops, and taking in that information and then passing it on to the contracts managers, and then making sure that that bespoke information is then inducted with the people who are actually doing the work on the job, and then they have a chance to talk about it in the daily briefings and challenge it. That is the core. If we actually take competent people with the ability to do dynamic risk assessments on a job, I think the majority, well, I think all work at height incidents are absolutely avoidable if there is this sensible planning, and also as well that we keep in the back of our mind that we are empowered to change, because there are changes. Circumstances change on construction sites all the time, and I think that just because a project's been priced to be done in a certain way, empowering people to have the right to say stop, have a rethink, that would be the final thing that would make things safe, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. Same question to you, John.
Yeah, I think it's our responsibility as employers to make sure that, you know, our employees and operatives go home safe every day, and it's been key for me personally to make sure that we have come up with the safest, the most practical, the most commercial solution for short duration of working at height. We've used all the other systems. We drill holes and you're tying ladders in, and they're just not practical in the industry, Andrew. And you know, being an ex painter myself, it doesn't happen. It's lip service. What we would introduce is a system that's simple, it's effective, it commercially works, and more importantly, the guys have embraced it. You know, we go to site, I see the people, I see the operatives and employees using the system every day because it's simple, it works, and you know, our accident records are testament to itself, Andrew. It's a proven method, and all I would say for today really is it's our, you know, we've spent a long time and a lot of money investing in, you know, new dynamic solutions for our operatives to work safe every day and go home safe.
Thanks. And then final say from you, Clive.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I'll probably echo a few of things what John and Richard said, to be fair, but yeah, empowering your people to say no, having courage to say no, I think it is key. Another one is, I would ask you all to revisit and look at your personal relationship to both safety and health, whether it's working at height or not. And I know paperwork doesn't make things safe, it's your general attitude in life, but you have to have the documentation there. God forbid you sat in front of a man with a white wig. So it's having I've been looking at your working at height policies, make sure they're robust, make sure that God forbid somebody comes knocking, you've got that there to support you. And then I suppose the last thing is, is making sure you've got the knowledge in terms of the selection, the equipment that's out there to select the right equipment for the job that you're doing.
Okay, that's brilliant. So I am sort of conscious of time and really want to do just two things or three things now in terms of wrapping up. So firstly, again, with apologies for the issues we've had with the sound on the videos, we will be sending out either later on today or tomorrow the links to those videos. I really want to thank you, the audience, for being there and for bearing with us. There have been a couple more questions, and again, I'll send the questions round to the panel afterwards, and we'll get some responses to that. And then finally, to thank John, Richard, and Clive for being here. We've had already some positive feedback in terms of that was a really interesting session. It would have been even better if you'd got to see the video. But please, as Richard has said, you know, the technology happens. You would have thought after all this time we would have got it right. But anyway, again, thanks all for listening. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll be keeping you in touch with the next in this series of webinars from Fusion. So thanks very much all, and have a great day.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yes, Andrew, thanks. Thanks, Richard. Bye, John.